Welcome to the Finance and Operations Committee meeting, October 3rd. I'm Paulette Woods. I'm the Finance and Operations Chair. And today we have a very important presentation from our Chief Financial Officer and our auditors to give us the result of all their hard work, their management of our finances throughout the year. We have our financial team here with us, and our financial results are said to be excellent, but they're presented always by an independent third-party auditors. So I will turn it over to Dr. Mavanga to introduce our CFO and to give remarks.
Thank you, Board Member Woods. Good afternoon to all the honorable board members here. Really excited to be here to introduce our CFO, James Bonds. As board members Woods introduction, we are really excited, dealing with finance. About $1.2 billion is really a big task. It takes a good chemistry. It takes really savvy folks to make sure that everything is on point. So really excited to be able to introduce our CFO. And first of all, I would like just to say, James, thank you for the great work that you're doing, you including all your staff. So time to time, so we don't get those accolades until something is wrong. But I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for this great work. So without further ado, James, I want you to take the floor.
Have a discussion on our 24-25 audited results. Admir, first slide, please. But I did want to provide a little more detail than their report. And then I'm going to take a few moments to recognize the finance team. So on this first slide, we look at the actual results versus our approved budget and the Q3 25 projection. We originally budgeted an $83 million deficit. The projected deficit at the end of the third quarter and what was included in our 4-year plan was 49.4. The final audited deficit was 36.9. So that extra 13 million above, below what's in the 4-year plan will help us. The actual results versus prior year. Total revenues. They went up $20 million last year. The total expenditures and transfers out, they went up $106 million. This next one's important. The 25 results had a $36 million deficit, and we had a $48 million surplus in the prior year. That swing is the focus of the superintendent's weekly efforts to cut the deficit in the current year and start planning for the 26-27 budget. A deficit is, in its simplest form, it's a reduction in your fund balance. So our fund balance dropped from 424 million to 387. Admir, next slide. Okay, the auditors will talk about our fund balance quite a bit. I just want to point out a couple of things. This is hard to read, but in the blue section, that's our year-end fund balance and the restrictions and the assignments. One thing that's in the assignments is a $50 million assignment for capital needs. And it's a bit of a misnomer. $25 million of that is dedicated to the new commissary and funding for the new lease after the C fund balance wears out in about year 9. And secondly, $25 million is set aside for the potential Buff State Da Vinci project. That's the amount of the project that will not be aidable nor bondable. The second thing I'd like to point out is way at the bottom in yellow. you see the $374 million fund balance? That's the amount that was projected in our 4-year plan. Because we beat the projections in the 4-year plan, we added about $12,495,000 above and beyond to start out this adventure of our 4-year plan. Admir, next slide, please. Quick review, significant budget variances. Our revenues were $10.2 million greater than the approved budget. Sales taxes were $4.3 million above budget. Interest income, which we'll talk more about. Andrew did some work on that with the city. They were $2.6 million greater than budget. Interfund revenues, which are really indirect costs from grants, were about $2.5 million greater than budget. And the revenue team, some of which are here tonight, they captured an additional $6 million in foundation aid at the end of the year. On the expenditure side, total expenditures were $35.6 million below budget. The big areas that came in lower than the approved budget: transportation, 7.5, salaries, 16.9. That's the vacancy number that we're used to seeing. Charter schools, $4.5 million, contracts, 8.6, and utilities and vehicle fuel, 4.1 million less. A quick comment on that. This is part of our budget culture and practices. That transportation number, that's based upon the number of buses we were told and the contracted rates during the budget process. So it really could have been $7.5 million than the actual. You don't ever want to put your organization in the position where you go, I'm going to take 10 million off our calculations and be short at the end of the year. So there is another note I want to make. We transferred $15.8 million to capital projects that was unbudgeted. This strategy allowed us to begin work on the year 1 capital projects prior to receiving those much delayed bond proceeds. So if we had a $39 million deficit, it could have been, I gotta do math in my head, a $26 million deficit or something like that, if we didn't strategically use that cash to fund capital projects to get the work going. While this is largely a report on the general fund, it should be noted that food service fund reported a $2.2 million deficit and ended the year with reserves of $37.7 million. Here's why I wanted to report that. That $37.7 million are funds that are to be used in year 9 of the new lease to cover the deficits at that time. So the C fund's going to require more management. We got to keep an eye. We're straddling between the federal government telling us you got too much surplus in there and spend it down, the need for upgrades at the school cafeteria, and then keeping a pot of money aside for year 9 of the new lease. So that's why I wanted to report it there. Good. Admir, next slide. I know this is really, tonight is really just should be focused on the others, but I can't help myself by taking a peek ahead. The current year calls for a $78.8 million deficit. Remember, this approved budget did not include any major FTE cuts or school closings. To offset those events, and the budget includes cuts to all non-staff items, including contracts and overtime in a few selected areas. The 25-26 budget will have fewer vacancies the way it looks right now. So we're going to show higher wage and benefit expenditures in the past few years, and there won't be those vacancy savings that I just reported. So it's going to be hard to beat this $78.8 million deficit without extraordinary efforts. But boy, I see the superintendent putting in those extraordinary efforts. We meet weekly to identify additional cuts in both the current year and to get ahead of next year's budget process. Deficit reduction actions already processed this year include a 5.5 FTE cut to central office positions and 6.6 million in expenditure reductions and revenue increases. During those weekly meetings, we have a list of items that are open for discussion. There's an additional 53 FTEs and 15 million in cuts currently being considered by the superintendent. So it's going to be tough to beat that 78, but we're off to a good start. A quick look ahead at the 4-year plan and the 26-27 budget, which we're all talking about already. We're currently in a strong financial position, which you saw from our fund balance, but we have to address the structural deficits. The superintendent has set a goal for cutting 100 FTEs and $60 million in expenditures in next year's budget. Keep in mind the 4-year plan includes closing 2 schools and cutting those 100 positions. And also keep in mind all bargaining units, their contracts expire June 30th, 2026. The BTF expires June 30th. Not managed appropriately. Okay, next slide, Edmund. All right, I appreciate taking about 10 minutes to recognize the finance team. First of all, they all wanted me to say, and I think this is in our culture, we're not perfect. We're always learning. Audits and things help us put best practices or a finer point on our current procedures. So, but they are, if not perfect, I'll tell you, they're really damn good. And a second characteristic is they like to work in the background. They don't look for the spotlight. I had to just about force them here today. But seriously, I wanted to coming on the heels of this good of an audit for an organization as large and complex, I think one night they could be recognized for a few minutes. And as I go through some of this, it'll reinforce just how big and how complicated our organization is. So, even with the audited deficit of 36.9 million, it was a successful year for this group of managers. The actual results were $46 million better than the approved budget, $12 million better than that Q3 projection. We navigated through the cost of an additional 152 ARP-ESSER positions that were thrown into the general fund. And we took on the responsibility for constructing the $37 million capital budget and financing plan, including the first sale of bonds. The financing plan for the commissaries was approved. We often forget about these things because there's always a new challenge. But tonight, I'm just taking a few moments to recognize this group. Andrew Onigi, he's our financial controller. He's the big guy sitting right in the middle.
Wave your hand.
He's the chief accountant for the district. He manages a trial balance of over 11,000 accounts across 8 funds. He's responsible for all accounting. It's going to become a new term. Internal audit functions and manages the external audit process and the submission of the ST3. Him along with Chuck are second in charge of the finances. This audit would not have been successful without Andrew. Stephen Galante. Stephen, why don't you tell us your sign and Stephen is the head of audit and accounts payable. He reviewed and paid over 20,000 vendor invoices, issued about 8,700 ACH and checks for a total of $781 million. The average payment time to vendors is 47. It used to be 58. And he implemented the ACH. That's an electronic payment system. We pay electronically now to over 479 vendors. Chuck Salvermosa, where is he? Oh my God, he's got a suit and tie on. He's responsible for the construction and administration of the general fund budget. He does an outstanding job with all the database work, including the salary cost projections. The most important projection we make, because it represents 60% of our cost, he gets them pretty close to write on for 11 different bargaining units. Andrew and Chuck are managing two huge sides of the house, so. Rachel Nyland, not here tonight. She's responsible for all general fund revenues. Produced over $939 million in state aid through SAM submissions, and about $60 million in sales tax revenue from the Erie County, in sales tax. Danielle Schwanekamp, here she is. Danielle manages grants of over $130 million. She ensures all grants are in compliance with the grantor guidelines. But more and more, as we face these big challenges ahead, she works more and more closely with me on new funding strategies, using things you used to not say grants could be, no, they can be used for. And we work closely. Hillary Burzon, payroll. And I gotta say,
Hold on one second, please.
Hillary Burzon, payroll. She gets an awful lot of grief from the district and the community. But you know what? She gets it right 99.99% of the time. She processed 169,000 paychecks last year. That averages about 6,500 every 2 weeks. And at one time, there was all these complaints and issues over a few people, and they're all serious when you miss them. Overtime payments. Well, she paid out over $28 million in overtime last year, including $19 million to the BTF. On time, correct.
All right.
Now, those, again, we're not perfect. Mistakes are made, but tonight's just the night to present another side. Jennifer Latempio, like Hillary, she takes a lot of grief. Head of purchasing. She reviewed over 11,000 requisitions that were entered. She converted 9,100 into POs. Guess why the POs is less than the recs? Because she finds mistakes, errors, things that shouldn't be entered and kicks them out. She also processed over 1,200 pick ticks from inventory. Here's one. And Larry, you should be introduced to Kim. Kim German is the head of charter schools. She oversees the enrollment of nearly 11,000 Buffalo students that are attending charter, supervises, maintains, collects, and verifies the enrollments within Infinite Campus. She ensures the accuracy of student enrollments for the approximately $190 million per year in tuition invoices. This year, we're spearheading a huge pushback on the charter schools for what's called intercepts, and Kim is leading that charge. Got Maria Wood. Maria, she manages the school-based budget and the FTE. She manages the critical school-based budget process. You can ask any principal, any department head, any ASO about her knowledge, and yeah, her stubbornness during the school-based budget process. She works closely with HR to ensure that position control and budgeted FTEs are reconciled throughout the year. Cara Finelli, not here. Another budget examiner. She's responsible for the daily overall budget administration. I mean, Chuck's the head of budget, but he's often swamped on bigger picture issues, and Cara picks up a lot of pieces in a lot of different areas. She's also critical for FTE tracking and reporting. We have Derek Nelson. There he is. She's the budget examiner for plant and the H fund. And Lou, I apologize, I included him in here. But he did tremendous work on the year one capital projects, and he'll be a big part of the year two capital budget submissions. Thank you, guys. And
Can we all give them a, can we give them a hand? They worked hard all year, all year.
thank you. I've got one quick thing. I see Sharon Fong here. She's our new director of internal audit.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? And I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Jim, would you like us to share the presentation or is someone
Yeah.
there sharing it?
If you could, please.
Sure. I think Jenna's doing that for me. So hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Dayton with Jenna Sheehan from Lumsden and McCormick. And as Jim said, we're here to present the results of your audit for June 30th, 2025. I'll get started while Jenna's pulling it up. Oh, there we go. Thanks, Jenna. So our deliverables remain the same as in prior years. So you're hiring us to render an opinion on your financial statements. And we're issuing an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, meaning we find your financial statements to be proper and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Also included within the financial statements are two other reports, one in accordance with government auditing standards, which is additional compliance requirements required for all school districts in New York State. We had no matters under those standards. And then another in accordance with the uniform guidance, which is the single audit portion of your audit. And that is required because you receive federal funding in excess of $750,000. And in fact, you received $107 million of federal funding in 2025, which was down from federal funding of $188 million in 2024. And as Jim has mentioned and has mentioned numerous times in the past, this was really due to the sunsetting of the ARP funding. So there was a decrease of $81 million in ARP funding as that funding ran out. That was a specific period of time, and that was all COVID-related funding. So that is the reason for the decrease in federal funds. You're deemed to be a low-risk auditee. So this is because in the past few years, you've had an unmodified opinion on your financial statements, and we've had no findings and no question costs relative to our testing of your grant funding. And that has not always been the case. But because you're deemed to be low risk, we're technically only required to test 20% of your federal expenditures. For 2025, based on the program rotation, we still ended up testing 40% of your expenditures. We tested the Title I program and the supporting effective instruction program, which was about $43 million of that $107 million in federal expenditures. And we had no findings and no question costs. We will also assist management with certification of a data collection form. That is the information detailing all of the grant funding. That's the last piece of the audit, typically, because we do need approved financial statements to upload as part of that process. They upload to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse along with specific information on all of those grants, and then management certifies and submits it. That's not due until the end of March, but we typically have that done for you by the end of October. We also issue an extra classroom activity schedule of additions and deductions. This is on your student club activity. So you had about $1.4 million flowing in and out of all of those student clubs during the year. We do select and test some of those clubs and look at the club records. There's typically student records as well as district records, and those should obviously reconcile. And we just had some minor recommendations, which I'll go through in a moment on that. And then we have the Contract for Excellence Agreed Upon Procedures report. This report is required because you are part of this Contract for Excellence program where a portion of your foundation aid is set aside to target those with the greatest educational needs. And there's certain procedures we're required to perform relative to that funding. It was about $28.3 million in 2025. And there were no issues with that either. That report is due January 1st, 2026, but it is ready to be issued as well. And then the final two pieces are the communications with those charged with governance, which is all of you, and the management letter, and I'll go through those on the next two slides. So the required communications letter is standard wording that is required as part of our audit of information we are required to present to you. One is that our responsibility as auditors is to render an opinion on your financial statement. It is not to audit 100% of your activity. We audit based on risk and materiality and other factors every year. But if we were going to look at every single number, we would be there for months and months, and you'd never be rid of us. The plan, scope, and timing of the audit, as we mentioned prior to our audit field work, there were no changes, and that really just went on as planned. We are required to be independent, as Jim mentioned at the beginning, which we are, in order to perform your audit. We also want to draw your attention to significant accounting policies, estimates, and disclosures. So for 2025, you are required to adopt a new accounting pronouncement, a Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement, or GASB 101, on compensated absences. So compensated absences is your accumulated sick and vacation time that is earned by your employees and either used during their employment or paid out at retirement or put into sick banks for use by other employees. So that amount has always been estimated, but there were changes in how those liabilities were estimated this year under the new standard. So we spent a significant amount of time with Andrew and various others within the finance department, having them document their assumptions, reviewing those assumptions back and forth with them. And at the end of the day, there was an adjustment to the liability, but it was not material to your financial statements. So no restatement was required of beginning year balances. And it was just adjusted through the current year liability. And it resulted in a decrease in your compensated absences. There are certain other estimates included within your financial statements. These are consistent with prior years. The major ones are your capital assets, so your buildings and your equipment, and it's really the amount of time that those assets are useful to you and therefore how many years they are depreciated over. There's estimates for the amounts for your self-insured health insurance plan and workers' compensation, the compensated absences I just mentioned, pensions and other post-employment benefits. These are the two that are subject to actuarial calculations. For the pension plans, that's the New York State's teachers' retirement system and employees' retirement system. So those calculations are performed by New York State's actuaries. And then you have an actuary who calculates your liability for other post-employment benefits, which is the health insurance paid to retirees or paid for retirees. Other estimates include leases and then amounts included within your reserves and assigned fund balances. We'd also like to point out significant disclosures in the financial statement. So if you're going to focus on just a few of the notes in your 50-ish page financial statements, we would point you to notes 5, 6, and 7, which really detail out where most of those estimates are and also where your long-term liabilities are. So note 5 includes detail on the district's outstanding bonds, on the certain long-term liabilities, including compensated absences, leases, etc. Note 6 and note 7 are all the actuarial assumptions and calculations relative to the 2 state pension plans and your other post-employment benefits. And then the rest of the letter had nothing truly of significance. If we had had any difficulties during the audit, if we had disagreements with management on implementation of accounting pronouncements, any of that, we would be required to disclose those to you. Any adjustments were agreed to and recorded by management as part of the audit process, and there were no other significant matters, findings, or issues required to be included within this letter. The next letter is the management letter. And this is where we would communicate to you any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the district's internal controls. We did not find either. And so our comments are really all just suggestions or areas of improvement. And I think almost all of them have been updated from prior year management letters. So one is accounting for grants in the special aid fund. I believe we spoke about this last year. Management in the finance department is in the process of improving their accounting for the grant funding during the year to ensure that all grant revenues and expenditures tie out, since any grant funds you receive either need to be spent or returned if you don't spend them, which doesn't typically happen. So just ensuring that the year-end balances agree as far as the revenue and expense detail. Excess fund balance in the food service fund, Jim touched up on this one a little bit as well. So the federal requirement, because you receive federal funding in the food service fund, is that you keep no more than 3 months worth of 3 months worth of expenditures in fund balance at year end. New York State, if that fund balance exceeds 6 months expenditures, requires you to submit a plan for use of the fund balance. So you were over the 6 months, as Jim mentioned. You have submitted a plan which has been approved by the state. You did use about 2.2 million of your available fund balance in the food service fund this year, which you'll see in a couple of slides. And you do have a planned use, which is for the lease payments for the commissary. So that point is in there because it is in excess of that requirement, but you do have a plan in place. The plan has been approved and it is expected to be used within the next few years. The extra classroom activity accounts I alluded to previously, this is your club activity. There were just some receipts and disbursements details with missing student or faculty advisor signature. So we just remind you that they should be signing all of that activity as part of their responsibility as the student treasurers. Then finally, bank reconciliations in the capital projects fund were not always completed monthly, so we just recommend that those are reviewed and updated on a monthly basis. There had been a delay at year end, but that was adjusted and corrected prior to sharing these audit results with you. For prior year updates, we had previously mentioned doing a full vendor list review. Jim mentioned, I think, the number of vendors, and I don't remember what it was, but it was a lot. And just reviewing for duplicate vendors or vendors that are no longer necessary. And so that is in process, and I believe the intent is for that to be resolved during this current fiscal year. And then we'd mentioned in previous years, as I'm sure you remember, allocating interest to the reserves. So the majority of your cash is held by the city. Reserves typically require that any interest earned on those get added to the reserves. And as Jim had mentioned, there was about 2.6 million interest added to a couple of the reserve funds during the year, and I'll point those out on the next page. There's 2 final points, informational points. There were 2 new accounting standards issued that are both effective for June 30th, 2026, your current fiscal year. So we will be reviewing those for next year's audit. GASB 103, financial reporting model improvements. Will make a few adjustments to management's discussion and analysis that's included within the financial statements. And it also changes the budget page a bit and requires additional disclosures of any budget modifications. And then GASB 104, disclosure of certain capital assets, will require certain capital assets to be separately stated within the note disclosure, and that is already occurring for the types of capital assets you have, so we don't anticipate any change in your financial statements for that standard. Moving on to the numbers, so into the financial statements themselves. I'll go through fund balance and then I'll hand it over to Jenna to go specifically through general fund revenue and expenditures, as well as the government-wide numbers. So first, just looking at a snapshot of general fund balance, and this is very similar to what Jim had up on his slides a few minutes ago. Fund balance is categorized into various categories in accordance with accounting standards, and it's non-spendable, restricted, assigned, and unassigned. Non-spendable just means fund balance you cannot spend because it already has been spent, and that's mostly in materials and supplies inventories within the general fund, and that's relatively consistent year to year. Restricted fund balance are amounts specifically in reserves that are authorized by general municipal law and or education law. And you can see no significant changes in those reserves either, with the exception of an increase in the tax stabilization reserve of $58,000, and that is the allocation of interest earnings. And then assigned amounts are amounts that you have agreed to set aside for specific purposes. Jim mentioned these recently. The OPEB and employee benefits increase, the 2.55 million, is also interest earnings. And then other changes are an increase in the capital projects and repairs amount set aside, which again, as Jim mentioned, 25 million of that is for funding of the commissary lease payments subsequent to the usage of the food service fund, and 25 million is for the Buff State Da Vinci High School project. Moving further down, unassigned fund balance, again, as he mentioned, is the amount by difference. And that did decrease about 56.9 million because there was some funding in other categories, but total fund balance in the general fund, in agreement with Jim's slides, was a $36.9 million reduction, which was about $12.5 million less than was anticipated at your Q3 projections. If we then move to looking at fund balance for all of the funds, up at the top again are the totals for the general fund. The special aid fund is zero, which it should be, because again, your revenue should equal your expenditures for your grant funds. But I just wanted to point it out because although it's zero, during the year you had $135 million worth of grants flowing through that fund. Of the 135 million, about 71 million of that is federal. In the prior year, you had, instead of 135 million, you had 206 million in federal funding. Again, that decrease is because of the sunset of the ARP ESSER funding. And again, having more, therefore, coming into the general fund and using some of that fund balance as you had expected. Fund balance in the capital projects funds increased almost $9 million. Jim mentioned this as well. There was that unbudgeted transfer of $15.8 million from the general fund to start on the capital projects. There was also 2.3 million of interest earned in that fund. And then those were offset by about $9.2 million in expenditures on those projects. Fund balance in the debt service fund is relatively consistent, a $1.4 million decrease. Your bond payments go through this fund. So you had transfers in plus some interest earnings totaling about $89 million. And then you had $90 million of principal and interest payments coming out of that fund during the year in accordance with your debt amortization and repayment schedules. We discussed the decrease in the food service fund of $2.2 million. That is that $37.2 million in fund balance that is in excess of that 3 months and 6 months expenditures. And then the special activities and permanent funds typically have little activity. Those are some smaller grant funds and endowment funds. And you can see there, very minor, that it rounded to the same number for special activities. And in the permanent fund, that increase is due to interest earnings. So again, total fund balance for all funds is 466.1 million versus 497.7 million in the prior year. And then I will turn it over to Jenna, and she will focus first on the general fund.
Thank you, Sarah. So Sarah mentioned we'll just quickly touch on some significant variances year over year, starting with general fund revenue, and then we'll move over to general fund expenses. So overall, looking at your total revenue for the general fund, that was up just under $21 million year over year. Starting right at the top, your contributions from the city, consistent year over year. That's related to your property taxes and STAR. Sales tax was up about $1.3 million, and that's really just based on overall economy, inflation, spending within the county. And then your state aid, your most significant increase, That saw an increase of about $25.3 million, and that was really driven by an increase in your general aid, which we were expecting based on the overall state budget. There was a 4.2% increase in the state budget in the general aid category, so that is very consistent with what the district saw in 2025. And then your other revenue, that was down about $5.8 million, and that is driven by a decrease in some refunds of prior year expenses, which relates to some closeout of grants that occurred during fiscal year 2024, as well as a decrease in interfund revenue. Again, as Jim and Sarah have both mentioned, that's related to the closing of those ARP funds and like the wrap up of that spending. Moving on to general fund expenditures, there was a $106 million increase in expenditures year over year. Your most significant expenses being your salaries and related employee benefits. That's about 62% of your total expenditures. Overall salaries increased about $36.2 million from 2024, related to raises, step increases, those contractually required increases, as well as the movement from the special aid fund to general fund as some of those ARP supported positions were moved over to general fund. Employee benefits, looking at your retirement system, those were up, the expenses there were up $6.2 million related to increase in rates as well as the overall increase in payroll. Health insurance up $12.2 million. Really, we're seeing this across the board, a general increase in overall health insurance rates, as well as increase in prescription costs. Payroll taxes and other benefits up $6.2 million, again, consistent with the increase in salary, so we would expect that to increase in line with that as well. Overall charter school payments, those were up $14.9 million as a result of a 4.6% increase in tuition rates, as well as an overall increase in not only charter school students, as well as special education students. And then finally, contractual and other, that was up $30 million from 2024. And again, similar to the salaries, we were seeing some expenses that were previously recorded in the special aid fund under that ARP funding, moved over to the general fund in the current year. Those expenses included some IT contracts that totaled $5.1 million, the Say Yes contract, which was $1.5 million, and then some instructional supplies, which was about $3.8 million. Some additional increases not related to ARP were $4 million worth of hardware purchases that the district had during 2025, as well as $1.9 million related to the commissary. And then the last thing just to touch on is the government-wide summary and reconciliation. So this is really taking you from your fund basis statements to your government-wide. So things that aren't recorded on the fund basis include your capital assets, long-term liabilities, pension and OPEB, and we'll just touch on some of the more significant variances there. Overall, your current assets, those were down just under $27 million, related to a decrease in cash held by the city, which was all offset by an increase in your accounts receivable related to state and federal funding. So that's really just a timing difference of when those payments come in. Your capital assets were down $67 million, related to your depreciation and amortization expense of $87 million. That was in excess of your current year capital asset additions of $21 million. Pension, OPEB, and deferred resources, that's down $151 million year over year. And we'll just kind of briefly touch on what makes those numbers up, what the differences are. As Sarah mentioned, those are both based on actuarial valuations. So overall, if you're looking at your all of the accounts, you're including the net pension asset, liability, deferred inflows, and deferred outflows for a net asset of $104.5 million compared to $93 million in fiscal year 2024. TRS is fully funded at 102%, so that's where you're seeing the net pension asset. And then ERS is 93.8% funded, which is showing a liability. And then those deferred inflows and outflows, those get amortized over 5 years. So you're going to see some fluctuation based on what got added during the current year, but also the amortization of those over the previous 5 years. And then finally, your OPEB, that is sitting at a net liability of $2.4 billion. And that's consistent with what the net liability was for fiscal year 2024. It was also $2.4 billion. Looking at your long-term liabilities, those were down just under $97 million. That's related to your debt payments of about $81 million, and then a decrease in the compensated absences liability that Sarah had mentioned, really just based on the new guidance for the calculation that occurred. And then finally, your other liabilities are up $3.7 million, just really based on the timing of payments for accounts payable, accrued expenses, and an additional increase due to additional amounts due to the retirement systems. And then at the bottom of this page, you'll see really just the reconciliation, as I mentioned, going from those fund basis statements, so your total governmental funds, net income or loss, adding in or taking out capital assets, your long-term liabilities, the pension, OPEB, and other, getting you down to the government-wide net income of just over $150 million. Comparatively, looking at 2024's net income of about $152 million, so consistent year over year. Any questions?
That's not.
Mary?
So as expected, I'm going to harp on the interest that we're owed and
Yep.
still are not receiving. I think it's probably 3 audits now that this has come up, maybe even more. We have a new administration coming in. I hope that we revisit this with the new administration in the city. And just, I think I know the answer to this, but Big 5 school districts, they have their own reserves.
Yep.
Not with the municipality.
Yep.
They receive the interest on their reserves, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That is not, we talk about equity all the time. Everybody's talking about it, everybody.
Yep.
And clearly that is not equitable.
One thing, this really was a good audit. So hopefully a night of positivity. I hear you. We did increase the interest by 2.5 million. Thank you, Andrew. But we have more to go after, and I agree with you. The new superintendent is dead set on changing things with the new mayor.
And Chief Barnes, I should have let off with that. Thank you for all of your hard work and every single one of you. And those that aren't here for everything that you do. Because we see over and over the issues that the city of Buffalo is having with their budget. And since I've been on this board and I've been paying attention, our budget, which is larger, it's always been balanced. And we've never been in trouble like the city is facing and continues to face every day. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did the auditors give us a figure of how much additional revenue we would receive if we were paid interest? Because that's something we'd like to put in the plan for possible additional interest. Last year, I believe they did give us a figure.
Auditors did not. We did a rough estimate. It was like $4 or $5 million. If anyone's to blame for holding up that calculation, that was me.
Um,
On school. Well,
can you
just one
tell?
more question and then I'll.
Go ahead.
Charter schools. So it might be a question for Chief Prophet Bullock as well. Do we know every year students leave charter schools and enroll in BPS? Do we have that number for last school year? Okay.
I do not have that exact number offhand, but I can certainly pull it and make sure that that you get it.
Thank you. And if it's not too much work, if there's a way for the board also kind of be informed on charter school enrollment trends over the past few years?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
That's it for you, Larry?
That's it, I'm good.
Okay, I can't tell the hands that are up. Board Member Belton Cotton, you're next.
Thank you. I echo the sentiments of my colleague, Board Member Scott. I want to thank you also, Jim and staff, for the work that you do, and we appreciate the work. We are in the process of forming a committee where we are talking about closing schools. And I'm wondering, since in the past, it has been said that the reason why the city does not feel that they should pay us the interest on our funds is because we're occupying City Hall. So I'm wondering if that is the thoughts of the new administration or whatever, if we may be better off maintaining one of those school buildings and collecting our $4 to $6 million interest every year from the city by leaving City Hall. I'm just putting that out there because there's no reason for the law to state that we're entitled to get this interest money and the city of Buffalo does not give us our money. And it's not fair. And certainly for those of us who monitored what was going on, we carried the city for the past 10 plus years, $60 million for 6 months out of every year. They floated that money through our account. And when I initially took over as president, there was no evidence or even proof that that money was coming out of our account. I'm saying that to say that we are at the crossroads right now of a new administration, and the law is the law. And if it means that as a community, that we need to organize as a board member who represents a community, that I need to organize my community to put in a lawsuit against the city of Buffalo in regards to getting our funds. I am not opposed to it at this point. When we multiply that over the amount of years, I think it equals our current deficit, if you want to know the truth. Had we been receiving money of that nature over the years, I don't believe that we would have the deficit that we currently have. With that said, in moving forward with our audit process, in the past, the auditors have been given certain areas to focus in on. Has anything been identified for you to focus in on this year, or are you still waiting for that directive?
I think that's the internal auditors, which is another external firm, which is confusing, but the external audit is always focused specifically on the financial statements.
Right. So in the past, I'm not sure. I thought that we used external auditors to monitor certain things when I was over finance and ops. Isn't that not true?
Yes, it is true. It's just not
Okay,
us,
thank
is
you.
what I'm saying. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ju-
I'm
Juliana?
wondering, I did not have a chance. I only received the 6 attachments this morning at 11:03 a.m.
Yep.
I'm wondering if this 53-page financial statement will be uploaded to board docs for
Yes.
the public? Okay, and
It's
then
there.
I'm just glancing through this. With the Joint Schools Construction Board, do we have 2 board designees, or we will be assigning 2 board designees?
So the joint school construction is basically defunct. We need to keep
Okay.
reporting on this because there's outstanding debt. We need to keep reporting some of these statistics as long as there's outstanding debt. And this year, we broke through the $300 million barrier. We owe less than $300 million on the JSCB debt.
Okay, and then I'm wondering, so an adopted budget, I just went through my first budget process this year. Is that more of a suggestion, or is that like a ceiling of what we can spend? Are we trying to spend less than the approved budget? Does that mean we saved money? I mean, like the 46 million difference
Right.
seems pretty
Right.
significant.
It is.
And it's deliberately trying.
Oh, yes, without a doubt. Now, I want to give you a caveat. The approved budget is all those work sessions and detailed staffing list and school-based budget that come together and the board approves it. So we then upload that into our accounting system, our staffing systems. We're dedicated to hiring those people, spending those contracts. However, during the year, we will take a look at things and call department. Do you really need all this contract? Or you might want to not take some travel like this year. Just this year, we cut out all non-state travel after the approved budget. This year, the superintendent, every week I'm meeting with him, and boy, he's got ideas and questions on how we can reduce expenditures without impacting the services we're providing to the children. So,
And then, yeah, I wouldn't want to impact what's going to our students, but some things like the 28 million in overtime really stands out. I mean, that's.
Yep.
What,
And we
18
are.
million more than we're looking to save from closing.
Yep.
2 schools.
and you'll be hearing more about our plans on that.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you, Sharon and I had the opportunity to travel with Andrew in February.
Yeah,
He was a great asset and
Yeah.
really,
Andrew's the best.
represented the district well in Albany. Thank you.
I believe Jen McCosey, board member McCosey, you have your
I'm sorry,
hand up.
did he say anything bad about me?
Thank you, Chairwoman Woods. I do also want to echo the sentiments. This report, the audit, I mean, we've been in pretty good shape when I first came on the board. And well, let's put it this way. My question is kind of relative to what Board Member Cotman brought up, was when we really took a look at the accounts and had to work with, I just want to make sure, and Board Member Woods, correct me if I'm wrong, when we worked with the controller to see about separating accounts because all the funding was going into one spot. And in my eyes, it was kind of like a crayon IOU type thing that the city was dealing with when it came to our budget. Money was coming out of our accounts to cover city issues. I just want to make sure I was right in that because it's been my thought process since we were doing that a few years back. And I just want to point out that even though, we haven't had these interest payments, and it just seems that the city, since we really started looking at and analyzing where our money is going and what's been going on, the city has had a whole lot of issue, which meant that there was more going on with the funding for the district and where the city was concerned than we were aware of. And when we became aware, now the city is really struggling. And I just want to make sure, because people ask me all the time, we hear that the city and the district are one big fund, and I only bring the vague to it because sometimes I can't remember whether or not we separated accounts or what happened, but we analyzed it. And it had never been done before, as far as I remember. So just correct me if I'm wrong, and if not, I just really want to point out that once we really took a look at how the city's money, because we are a City of Buffalo School District, was brought to the table, that the city itself would have access to our monies. And now that that's not really as easy as it was years ago, we see that the city is struggling. So we are not only owed that money, but we had to look into some practices that obviously to the naked eye and people who are not in finances can really see through the story. And I just, I want to put that out there too. Am I correct in saying that, or am I just getting mad and running my mouth?
No, Jen, I hear your thoughts. Just 2 issues on the cash. One, these are charter-driven decisions, just like the cash can be commingled. It's the same reason that we cannot borrow money. It's a charter issue. We are a component part of the city of Buffalo, and it impacts those 2 areas very much so. Now, I assure you, there's nothing we put more effort into then a monthly reconciliation of cash with the city and a projection of cash flows for the remainder of this year. And then at the end of the year, we get help and support from our external auditors. Let me tell you how fine-tuned that reconciliation is. Lumsden, they're all nice and kind, but they're also pretty tough. There was a $2,925 difference between our cash and theirs. And they drilled and drilled until we got it reconciled. $2,925 on $444 million in cash balances. So we take it super serious, Jen. And then after that reconciliation and projection, it's really that we've been communicating out that projection. Like this year, unfortunately, we see where the city has deficits. We see more clearly than ever, and we're aware of that.
And you said, I asked the question, how many months has the city had to use our funds to pay their bills? And we asked for that to be, Sharon and I had asked for it to be clearly put on the fund balances that the city used.
And we do that. It's 6 months this year, the projections for.
So we are basically very kind and coordinating with the city because we are carrying them because they don't have a fund balance and they're paying their bills for 6 months out of our cash flow. So
Sure.
You're not mistaken, Jen. This has been an issue ongoing.
Right.
Thank you.
Is there another board member with any hands up or questions? Okay. Well, would you like a closing?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again, guys. Thank you.
We'll turn it over to you, Mr. Superintendent, since we got a excellent audit report saying we're doing great managing our finances. We have a significant fund balance and you're making cuts and recommendations and efficiencies to make us operate even better. So the last words go to you.
All right, thank you, Board Member Woods, and really excited, as I said earlier. Kudos to James' team, as well as all the cabinet members, because we've been collaboratively working, making sure that we're reducing all our expenses. To the points that I think one board members made, our relationship with our city. I look forward to my next meeting with the interim mayor to just bring up that conversation. I understand that there are 3 more months to go here, but I would love to have that conversation with him before the new mayor can come in. So those can be also some sensitive issues to have conversation, but I think one-on-one we'll see where we are, and if I have to get our board involved in that, that will be also important. But I was not aware about the usage of City Hall has impact with the connection of all our funding to being together. So that will be another conversation that I would love to have with the mayor. So thank you, board members, for your support. Credit to you as well, because we could have not been in a better position without you really supporting the policies that came in front of you. So with that, that's pretty much we finished with the first presentation with finance and operations, and I will pass it on to Honorable Vice President Cindy McKitchen, who has the floor for the next topic.
Cindy, you want to switch seats?
So we'll just stay. There's no, that's silly. Thank you, Dr. Uvanga. I am not going to say anything because we're not here to hear me talk. So I'm going to pass it back to you if you want to open us up. If not, we can move forward with the presentation.
Let's move forward to the next presentation. But
Awesome.
let me just preface this as Julian's coming up there, and her presentation is going to come with a policy that I'm going to ask your pleasure or how you're going to feel about that particular policy. For some reasons, Julianne is not going to be with us in November. She had a prior commitment that she will miss the next meeting. So if you feel, again, I'll say this is your pleasure, that the policy is really clear cut, that you would like to vote on it today. It's going to take us 6 votes to be able to move it for a vote. But if not, that's something that we would like to delay and to bring the second reading for December meeting. Again, no pressure. It's your pleasure, Board Chair McKitchen, as you're leading this. I just wanted to play with you, depending on how you feel about this, whether or not you're going to be able to vote on it tonight, or if not, we'll be waiting. We're going to hold it probably till December meeting. Julianne?
Thank you. Thank you to the honorable board members, to Dr. Mbenga and the community. I'm really excited to be here tonight to talk about artificial intelligence in the classroom, risk, impacts, and safeguards, and our policy. I'm going to cover a variety of different areas, hopefully briefly, just a little bit of level setting about what is AI. I know there's a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of different ways that it's being used currently in the district and throughout the world. The risks that we have associated with it, our current AI use for the last 6 months that we've been working on, and of course the policy draft language that I have presented for you today. So just to level set a little bit about AI with a reflection of in schools, the performing tasks that are typical with human thought, understanding language, examples of AI in everyday life, Google Translate, Grammarly, all of those, Netflix viewing. I'm sure you've seen those pop up on your Netflix, on your television, or on your Google Home. What they think you might like watching, and facial recognition are pretty typical. We're all kind of used to seeing those things every day. We're talking more in depth today about the Gen AI, generative AI, learning patterns, relationships, using that information to create new content, which is what we're really going to focus on over the next decade, creating images, music, audio, video, art, that kind of thing, that it's growing like every day quickly. ChatGPT, Copilot in our Microsoft applications, Gemini. Those are examples of Gen AI tools. Currently, we know that students are using them outside of school, that teachers, admin, everyone is using them somewhere, but not necessarily within the context of our domain here at BPS. Embedded AI vendor products, like I mentioned, such as Microsoft, we have Copilot running at certain levels. Our applications, Google Workspace, the central office apps that we have installed in different areas of the departments have AI embedded in it. Often we have them enabled, sometimes they're disabled. It depends on the risk involved. I would like to talk a little bit about the risks. I wanted to point out a little bit about this slide. This gives me the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing since I joined this great district in 2022. When I came in, every year we have been doing a risk assessment using the support of our vCISO and our vendor from Deep Seas. They've been instrumental in running risk assessments across the district. That risk compliance shows us that we were at approximately 57.3%. Those categories depend on a variety of topics, and the people that work in the district get interviewed. We talk about what kinds of applications are they using, what kinds of data have they been accessing, have they been looking at vendors, validating them, verifying those things. And some of those practices were not quite where they needed to be. In approximately about 2023, our compliance rose to 76.4%, which I was very, very excited about. Even though I'd only been here for about a year, we were able to look at a few big wins, tighten up the network, the wireless, some of the MFA stuff was finished. And then now our recent assessment, we are at 85.2%. And that is an incredible risk. And I will tell you that from our VCSO and our vendors, that is in the top, I wanted to say, top 10% of the districts that they work in. So I'm really proud. We aren't necessarily, and I know I say this in a very strange way, not necessarily striving for 100%. It is pretty much impossible to get to 100% compliance. What we do is we decide what is our tolerance level on different applications and different categories of risk that we are willing to undertake, that we know it's going to happen, that we can control. Locking down the entire district from any kind of, ability to go to any websites that someone might find risky, that's not reasonable. So we're willing to take certain risks, knowing that we have filters set, that we have staff that is hired to look at those things, to mitigate those risks, to keep track and uninstall applications, reset passwords. We know those things. So I have to thank, at this point, our partners, Zayo, DeepSeas, AIS. I mean, we have a slew of different groups of experts that we work with that have really contributed to that number right there, as well as Josh Kovacic, our director of infrastructure, and Curtis Brown, our WAN manager, who have recently written and we have received the cybersecurity grant from E-Rate for $1.25 million, which we are now working on installing and acquiring advanced firewall systems. So we are going to get even better. So I'm proud and very thankful for their work. Moving a little bit more into the AI risks in education. Some of you may have heard me, some of the staff has heard. About a year and a half ago, I said we are not allowing any kind of ChatGPT on the network at this point. We are not ready for it, but my goal is to have it. My goal is to open up a lot of different categories depending on where we were with the risk assessment. I said we probably won't be ready till about September of 2025, and here I am. These are some of the areas that we've been looking at that we're very focused on. The data privacy, obviously, with our DPO, Dr. Samulski-Peters. I work very, very closely with her. We try to make sure that we are enacting all of the laws, keeping track of the violations, and actually addressing all of the things that we know we have some gaps on. We're closing those gaps. The academic integrity, I work obviously Chief Botticelli and her team about all of the different categories that we could be concerned about with AI as we start to roll it out and plan to roll it out. The bias and the inaccuracy of information, the unfair bias with Chief Amos that we talk about that is incorporated in our grant, and the training that our ITCs and staff will be receiving with regard to bias and AI. Our equity concerns about the digital divide, we're dealing with that with the variety of different vendors we're using to garner more protective devices and distribute those out to our students. Confidential data exposure, policy non-compliance, and vendor embedded AI. We are concerned, and we rightly should be, with whether we do go deeper into a more in-depth transportation software with AI, or it is some other category, whether it's food service or a different department, with opaque algorithms. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know what they've put in formulaic wise as to what are they really searching for? What are they grabbing? The contracts. We have recently in our IT department, we are on most all of the RFPs to review contracts for any applications that are incorporated in those RFPs so that we can be sure and we can have the vendors checked for those risks to determine whether they have certain areas in play in the way that they're doing business with us. So these are the kinds of things that the IT department does under the cover of night, so to speak, our ninja groups, where you don't see the work that we do, but it is really underlying and the basis of any application that comes into the district. The impact, what we don't want, obviously, is student data breaches, the loss in trust from our staff and our community. We don't want achievement gaps to widen because we don't give equal, if we are not able to give equitable access to AI tools and learning, any data leaks, legal liability, and our reputational damage. We don't want to go through anything like that again. And that is my main concern as far as the network goes and VPS IT department with starting to use AI on our platform. I don't want to go too deep into tech stuff. So if I start to go down the road, just pull me back in. I try not to talk too much tech. But right now, what we're focusing on this year is the governance and the IT background, adopting an AI acceptable use policy. That's why I'm here today. Require vendors disclosure of our AI features and data handling. We're handling that inside the department. We are working on aligning with the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is the National Institute for Standards and Technology, which is what we follow for our risk assessments. Of course, our EdLaw 2D and FERPA. Data loss prevention is something that we have been doing in the department for quite some time, and access controls, which we work directly with Dr. Bullock's team on to prevent data leaks and access in our applications. Our encryption and activity logging for AI use, Josh Kovacic is on top of that with our entire Microsoft team. So these are things that we're working on every day regularly, but now even heightened more for AI. Our training and oversight categories, teacher training on appropriate AI classroom use, already had many meetings with our curriculum areas. We've got all of our curriculum directors excited and on board, really looking at what is it that we are going to change, if anything, or how are we adapting to help teachers understand how our current curriculum actually works within the context of any kind of AI tool that we might want to bring in. Student digital literacy curriculum, our ethics, our bias awareness, our student technology leadership program, our STLP students under Brianna Pride, they are already been doing digital literacy curriculum and training out in the schools. That's one of our pride points with our students. Staff admin training on handling confidential data, part of our modules, part of our required compliance videos. We are expanding that, and we will be incorporating AI modules within those within the next year or during the next year. Our AI, well, we don't have an AI governance team, but that's something that we will be having. We currently have an information technology steering committee, which is comprised of all of the departments, a member from all the departments in the district, and that gives us the oversight and governance on information technology risk. I run a lot of different things by them as far as this is what we're going to be doing in the course of the next year, and here is why. Do you have any questions? I feed our VCSO works with me on that agenda based on our NIST standards and our risk assessment. So that group I see forming together with an AI governance team, which will be looking at the maturity index of AI implementation over the course of the years as we go forward. So we're going to work as a team together, reviewing things. This is not a Juliana's making these decisions on her own kind of thing. I don't like that option, but I do like having a group of people that can give feedback and work together. Pilot programs before district-wide adoption. I've done 100 pilot programs for innovation technology in my lifetime, and this is very, very important. And that is why I'm going to talk a little bit about the pilot we've been running and how small and what it contains, so that we can be confident and comfortable when we move forward. And of course, the parent, guardian, community awareness on AI is something that I hold personally. I'm excited about. We are talking about how we might be rolling out some of that awareness, Saturday academies, different kinds of venues, because I know that out there, people are like, what is AI? I think I might want to use it. And even my staff in my office was like, how do you use it? And I'm like, oh, I just made this great recipe because I said, I have this many things in my fridge. What can I make? And they're like, what? And so it's silly little things like that almost that people are excited about, which may or may not be directly impactful in the classroom, but is linked to a better life, of which I really am really a proponent of with technology. All right, just current AI use. I just want to talk a little bit about the grant. All of our grant work is on the web, and there's a link in here, and you could visit at any time or ask any questions of me at any time. The Learning Technology Grant is something that we received, and it is basically the Kickstarter for this entire AI work that we are doing. We are incredibly lucky. This is a New York State Technology Grant that we wrote. It was a competitive grant from the instructional department to focus on how are we going to get ready. Focus on teachers. Prompt Pioneers is what we call it. We had a great kickoff on Friday with our teaching staff and our ITCs. We are focusing on developing a standardized coaching framework for these teachers, enhance digital literacy and AI among all educators, develop and implement an equitable AI instructional policy, which is why I'm here today, and integrate AI into the curriculum to support inclusive education. So those are our focus areas for this grant. These are the pilot buildings that are that are working with us on this pilot. They were chosen. There were 7 through 12 buildings. They were chosen because they had placed instructional technology coaching staff at these buildings. These buildings said, I want to fund these tech ITCs. And because of that, this is the perfect venue for us to work with just these buildings because they have staff on site to help. All right, this is a hot link, and I will ask Admir, can you open the grant page for me? Now go back. It's the top link, AI grant plans. Yeah, thank you. Okay, and then scroll down for me as I go. All right, artificial. This is our grant page. I'm not going to go through everything on this page because it is in depth and is growing by the day. If you scroll down, Admir, please. Just the current deployment status. Keep going. We had started this in May. We had a large group over at 94 with parents, teachers, IT staff, admin, and consultants from our grant. Continue down, please. This is a slideshow that you can slide and go through right on the web that has everything in the grant in it. I won't go through that because, you don't have to do that, Admir, just scroll down a little bit. Okay. The grant application is there if you want to read the whole thing, but all of this is information on AI and different areas and categories that we have been looking at and how we might use it in the district. Scroll down a little more, please. These are our general usage guidelines, and these follow the matrix. These follow the standard areas that you would come up against with AI, which is critical evaluation, human judgment, responsibility, the privacy. Scroll down, please. Ethical and responsible use, transparency, purposeful and approved use, which I'll talk about later, support and continuous learning. Those are our guidelines. Training and coaching. This is just, you can see exactly who's involved in the grant, the ITC coaches, supervisors, and our teachers. There's some great shots there of live actual work that was going on over the last 6 months. Scroll down, please. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And then a little bit about Magic School, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. Can you go back to the slideshow, Admir, please? Okay. Student impact starts with training educators. So we did not just give this out to students at this current time. They do not have access on their BPS issued device or on the domain if they use a private, if they use their phones or a private tool in some category that they brought in somehow. Many generative AI tools are trained on data sets that are not tailored towards our students. And that was a major concern for us, which is why we wrote the grant with a tool in mind. This is a slide I just want to say a special thank you to Kristen Mita. She was the program administrator and wrote was the lead grant writer for this. This is why I am here today. Her vision and the amount of work that her and her team has done is extraordinary. And of course, our BPS grant department, we could not have done it. This grant department is the best grant department I've ever worked with. I can't even make up a grant department that I worked with before. This is an amazing team. I know Jim left, but his team and Danielle and everyone underneath that group it was amazing to work with them and get this grant done and submit it. So what we did was inside the grant, we were looking for a tool. We went to a lot of different sessions with a lot of different districts. We went to Erie One. We saw a lot of different versions. We did an RFP, and Magic School was the application that we were able to choose through the RFP process that we felt had a contained environment that was safe for our students, but enabled us to start to look at how are we going to access a controlled AI environment with our teachers and feel safe that it also had educational practices and was going to be able to link to our current curricular areas. Some of the quotes from the sessions that we've been having recently, those are teacher quotes from the sessions. Excitement is happening, motivation, an idea like, oh, this is new, this is something that can help me change my practice, maybe get and generate excitement from students again in our classrooms. So we're putting a lot of, I mean, it's a fun group of people to work with, which I love to say is part of my day. I have some fun in my day. So our training program here, our process is the IT coaches and curriculum staff started the training. We started the sessions in April. They have a lot of online trainings that are coming through with our NYSTATE partner, which is the New York State for Computers and Technology Educators, a very, very highly rated national organization, as well as New York State. Our pilot teachers, they started training just last week. Our administrators, they are having administrator training in December. All principals will be able to start to see how AI can help them. Students, though, we are not allowing student access until at least January. It may not even be January. It's going to really depend on where we're at with our staff and what we feel, where we've come that far. And if students will have access, it will only be within the Magic School category, and it will only be at those pilot buildings. So it's a very small pilot, okay? I just want to make that clear so people just don't think their students are going to be on AI. They will not just be accessing AI here. Our pilot families, for those in the buildings where they will have access, we will be having information sessions. There will be a participation sign-off form. If they do not want their students to participate, they certainly have that option for the pilot. Parents, families, and community, as I mentioned before, we will have awareness sessions across the board as we start to roll it out. So people can start to ask a lot of questions and maybe hopefully get excited. Our classroom guidelines are in development. Working with Chief Botticelli and her team, they are developing guidelines for teachers in different categories of the curriculum so that we can be sure that teachers are comfortable with, if I let our students use AI, what are the boundaries? What are the areas that I need to train them on, that I need to provide for them? Can they use it? Where can they not use it? Those kinds of things, very common sense, requests that any teacher would have. Those are being developed with the curriculum departments. And then I said our AI guiding principles are on the website now. Just as a little quick snapshot of student AI use. I don't have a lot here because we don't have them accessing. But these are the kinds of things that we will be focusing on with them, brainstorming ideas, study guides, enhancing writing, of course, and the differentiated instruction and learning component is a really strong area with AI for teachers to start to differentiate, which is a little bit, will be a little bit more exciting. I mean, they do differentiate now, but the way that you can ask questions and really kind of interact with the AI tool is at a different level. I think it's really going to change a lot for instruction as we go forward. Before I go into the policy discussion, I wanted to know take a moment if you had any questions for me about what I have discussed thus far. Okay. All right. This board policy, obviously, most of our board policies come from ERI 1, and they do a lot of the work for the templates. This came out just recently, it was last week. Why? Your district should consider an AI policy at this time. They've put this policy template out. It had to be over a year ago. And then they put this out again because it is such a big topic. And it is something that everyone is asking about. Minimizing the risks in the privacy, promoting responsible use across the district, and enhancing educational outcomes. I think these are really important factors to moving us forward. Meaning, well, Juliana, do we have to have this policy to do AI? Well, yes, we kind of do. We are doing a pilot. However, to be able to answer questions that people say, why can't I have access? Our help desk gets questions every day from teachers. Why can't I have access? When are you opening it? So having a policy would allow at least me and Cabinet and Dr. Mbenga to say, okay, what is our policy going to be? When might that happen? I mean, I have an idea in my head of when I would like to open those things up. However, we have to have a plan, and having this policy will allow us to actually enforce a plan. So that's why I'm here today. And if you would click on that link and pull up the policy, I know that you all have the actual policy in front of you. I wanted to point out a few things about the policy and then take time to answer some questions. it incorporates, like all BOCES policies do, they vet it and they have, this is the legal policy from their legal department. As far as the definitions of AI and Gen AI, the risks, these are standard risks. You'll find this anywhere in any location, as far as the biases and the copyright. We're working on some of that training and some of those modules to address those items. The data privacy and security is fairly standard. Our student use area, we would like to, but that way, allow the use of Gen AI with our students at some point, as I said, in the future. This policy will allow us to go down that road. Okay. And this, the policy is very short, but behind that policy is a lot of other policies that we have that apply to this particular AI policy. The training awareness support. The policy that BOCES gave us was a good template. We added a few items in here. We met with the Parent Congress, we met with other groups, and they gave us a lot of feedback as to what about this, what about that. And we looked at those and we went and we took some of their suggestions, added some and layered some in here. We did not remove any language from this policy that BOCES suggested, but we did add some as far as the training goes, the way that we're reviewing applications we added in here, so that we were able to say, and potential opt-out opportunities we added in. So we took a lot of feedback from a lot of different people and a lot of different entities. I am a member of the Council of Greater City Schools peer CTO group. We meet together. We talk about all of these things, very common things that we have, common problems, common ideas. I work with Tom Ryan. He is the developer of the Matrix, of not the Matrix the movie, but of the AI Matrix tool that COSN has now worked with them on. So they develop and offer the workshops for development of AI and those kinds of tools together. So compliance with other documents here, you'll see that this refers to many different policies across the board. Because this is an AI policy, it kind of falls into some of the other things that we have, like an information security policy, the privacy security. It links to internet safety, acceptable use policy, personal use. So this policy incorporates a tremendous amount of other policies that are behind it for the weight it needs for us to go down this new innovation. This policy will likely morph over the next few years as AI develops further and the use of AI develops further. So I fully intend that we will have revisions as we go forward if this one is adopted as the way it is. So I will pause for conversation.
Admir, can we stop sharing the screen? Thank you. I'm going to open it up to my colleagues, and thank you, Juliana, for this presentation. Are there questions or thoughts with regard to the policy that is presented before us? The ask is for our consideration to be able to move this forward at next week's board meeting, if I heard Dr. Mubanga correctly. Board
Yes.
Member Posey? And then Sharon, I saw you also. I'll have you next.
Thank you, Chairwoman McEachen. I'm driving, so I'm not getting on camera right now, but the only thing that I ask, and thank you very much for, that was very in depth, but I understood where you were coming from. I'm glad that we've gotten feedback from folks around this. I do ask, as we've had issue in the past, when we go to implement something, we're very gung-ho, let's go do this, let's make it happen. But sometimes we don't have all the, everything in place to implement it equitably across the district, but also keep it, make sure everybody is able to access it. And if the district is responsible for such a thing as AI, which is going to affect every school building, I would like to reiterate something I've been bringing to the table for years, and that is that we maintain a PAR and then look into the climate of the school as to how it's implemented. But the PAR is, here's the implementation, here are the resources. We have every school covered and everybody who's going to get into it. Because the staggering of when schools decide to come on or don't come on, to me, the implementation is very serious with something like this. And we don't want to fall into who gets it and who doesn't based on, whatever factors are at the table. So my only ask is that if we take this on, that we do it with fidelity and that we do it across the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Belton Cotman.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation on AI. I would just like to, because I haven't had a chance to really read it in depth, to make sure that we are using what has been provided to us by New York State School Board Association and the Board of Regents in regards to formulating an AI policy. These are organizations that we pay resources to who have already done it, and I want to make sure that we check every box that they've included when we put our policy together. I'm looking at the Regents page for for the AI path forward for P through 12, and they list quite a few things. And I want to make sure that we include them in here. Without having a chance to really read this in depth, some of the things they have on here is impacts of computing, computational thinking, networks and systems design, cybersecurity, and digital literacy. Then they further go in here and talk about the responsibility of holding adults and children responsible in the process. So I would like just to make sure that a review is done for those organizations that we pay handsomely every year, that we make sure that those things are included in this as well, because this is a ever-changing process, and to have I haven't seen a short policy. That's what I'm saying. I haven't seen short policies on this as I'm looking. They're normally 2 to 3 pages long to cover things. So I just would appreciate if that is taken into consideration, what is being provided by New York State School Board, the Council of Great City School, the Board of Regents, and the National Association of School Boards, and make sure that we dot every I and cross every T in that area, because they have done work on that and we pay for those resources. And I think it's to our advantage to make sure we incorporate those things in. Other than that, AI is here. It will be distributed and utilized based on the needs of the participants. And I don't know how you can equitably implement AI other than putting a policy in place that's available for everyone to use it, because there are going to be some students that use it and some that don't, just as with most stuff. But looking at this, I just want to make sure we dot every I and cross every T if we're putting out that. And I'm sure that you should put in your policy that once a year, if not shorter term, that AI is reviewed, because it is forever changing and growing. And if you don't monitor it at least once a year, you're not going to stay on top of it. They're saying in the lectures that you should probably be monitoring it every 6 months or less. That's how quickly it's changing. So we have those things in place, and I think it would be to our advantage just to make sure we double check and make sure our policy includes what they're recommending. I think you probably already have it, but I just want to double check, because most of these AI policies are not short policies. Thank you.
Yes, if I may, okay. Yes, I have looked at and worked with a variety of different groups, including NISBA, and I think I didn't add that slide in, but I am, it was accepted. I am presenting at NISBA in New York City, at the conference on Friday at 4 p.m. And I'm working on a panel with New York City and the NYSE New York State Computer Technology educators. So I heard of very exciting. People are very interested in that session. So I hope some of you are going. I'd love to have you there with me. We're going to talk about our journey up to this point and where we are and how we're moving forward. So we have been working with them. Erie One and I actually speak fairly regularly on policy and what we're doing. The list of the policies at the bottom is exactly what you were saying, is why this policy might look like it might be short, but the links to I think there's 10 or 11 there. That's where the depth of the policy and the meat of it being enforced will go to. So all the categories that you said, like check them off. Yes, of course, we have looked at many policies and having conversation with Tom Ryan today, talking about the different templates, the examples that we looked at. I feel very confident, but I understand, this is a main concern for me. If we roll this out underneath my leadership or our leadership as a cabinet and Dr. Mbenga, because I say that because I'm IT, this is gonna fall if there's a problem, it's coming back to me. I'm very concerned, and I feel very strongly that this policy is gonna take us forward. And again, revisions, yes, there will be revisions as we go down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see anybody else online with their hands raised. I don't know here in the room if any of my colleagues have anything that they would like to add or any points of clarity. I'm seeing none.
Here I am.
Oh,
Cindy, I just want to chime in. Thank you, Julianne, for in-depth presentation on AI. And like Sharon Belton Cotman says, it's not going away. But I think just giving the board an opportunity to dive into the policy and read it, because it is hard to read, on the screen as you presented it, giving us an opportunity to read it. And I think, you should get great results after that.
I do want to just uplift the request from Dr. Mbenga, and that is just something that we need to decide upon today, or how we want to move it forward. Whether or not we do want to put this policy forth next week, or we want to hold off until December. That is out there. So it can be that we take some time for consideration. But whether or not we want to add this to the board packet for next week's meeting.
I'd like to wait.
Why wouldn't you add it?
I am comfortable with having it on the agenda next.
All right. Why wouldn't you add it?
Yeah, I think we should add it.
Yeah.
It's
Okay, so far I've only heard one for off. Terry.
I think you should add it.
I think we need it.
Okay, then I think that just based on kind of the polling of the board, we should be able to move forward. Just at this point with adding it next week, Dr. Mbenga.
Thank you, board.
Can I say, with the understanding that if additional things need to be added, that they would be considered. The date, I haven't looked at this, but as I'm starting to look at some of this stuff, I just want to make sure that we cover the data privacy legislations in there and things like that we cover everything we should have in there. So I haven't had a chance to really look at this policy, but we certainly need it. It's overdue. And I just want to make sure that we cover ourselves liability-wise. That's all.
Thank you, Board Member Belton Cotman. And I do want to just uplift something that I believe I heard Juliana say. So if you didn't say it, I'm not putting it into your mouth.
Oh boy.
But it is that this is one of those policies that we anticipate coming before us on a regular basis. And I think, Sharon, you actually brought that up also. That advisement is every year to 6 months. And I think that that's a good practice for us, and was also articulated for that point that even when we think we might have got it all, it's evolving, it's changing, it's moving. So this is certainly going to be a policy that is fluid in its own way, and will be reviewed on a regular basis. Dr. Mbenga, I am going to hand it over to you at this point.
Vice President, I'm going to hand it back to you to adjourn us. So no further comments. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you all. And this meeting is concluded. Thank you, everyone.
Right.
Hey, thank you.